Bihaya. Ayan na po. Yay, pinang-pina na siya. I love it.
They started to draw a map of what the federal office is.
Charan, charan, charan.
So that I can take an intervention, see what the target is, track where it goes, and ultimately find some path through the system. So for the folks in Pueblo, what this started to do was to say, okay, I can see where I fit in the system. I can see who I'm most closely related to. I can see how what I do affects what you do. We can start talking the same language because we're looking at the same map. We can talk about how we relate to each other. And we can actually have a real conversation. And then up there, they start saying, well, gee, where's the money going to come from that we're working with? And whose money is it anyhow? And who should control it? And should you guys control it over here? Should we control it over there? And how do we talk about that? And how do we capture savings? And how much is invested? What if everybody is insured? And what if they're not insured? So that we started to map out this and started those conversations. The program wanted the answers to their questions. They wanted to know what's the best thing they can do for Pueblo. So let's talk
Bilang.
about
Hi, Charmaine.
they started to develop a list of those things that are interventions that they were really interested in. Those things they were curious about. So it fell in
Ay,
the
kamusta ka na,
category of
Charmaine?
healthy behaviors, reduce
Share ko
crime,
muna to.
pathways. They started to look at things we're doing around care, control mental illness, the hospital-acquired infections, and then how we can actually manage costs. So they started to break these down and then look at funding, capturing savings, and then what's going on in the economy? What if we're insuring everybody? And started to create a user interface that they, as this diverse group, could do work coming together to say, okay, let's play out these scenarios. Let's see what would happen. And they literally were able to move levers and say, okay, what if we do improve care for physical illness? What if we support adherence? What
Ano
if we
kung
do that
makikita
with
na ay na naman
what if
ako?
we do these together? What if we put more money in as opposed to less money? There are a number of these slide levers that you can manipulate. And they worked with this, and they worked with this, and they worked with this. They ran about 160 different models, looking at the what if scenarios, what if we do this, what if we do that, what if we try something completely different we never thought of before. And what?
Okay lang.
This is the best plan that they came up with, and it's a combination of care and care coordination, reducing infections, but also things like the upstream. How do we really affect behaviors? How do we actually look at some of these socioeconomic issues? How do we look at access? And look at the numbers. This is 27 years out. There are graphs that show the spending curves and what the utilization and the impact curves are. But look at these categories.
Shout out.
We can get the death rate down by
Natutulog si
20%.
Carding, hindi ako pwede
We can
magingay.
get severe physical illness down by 21% in this model. We can get healthcare costs down by 19%. Not only are they spent, by the way, they spent on this 1% of their total healthcare costs for a year for 5 years. So their 1% comes up to $10 million a year. They figured they could do this for 5 years, so their investment in this was $50 million over 5 years. At the end of the program, they have $644 million left over that they can spend on roads and schools and parks and playgrounds and bike paths. Because of their local politics,
Kapit ko muna.
they started to look at it and say, what does it really take to get this done? And as opposed to what most organizations would do in this situation, they say, oh, let's just go do it. Let's just go try it. Let's just go start. What Pueblo said was no.
Kung nakasum, di ba?
We are going to build the infrastructure that we need in order to make sure that this is sustainable, because this is long-term. This is going to take time. This is something where we need to do it right. We need to have an organization that has this as their goal. We need a governance structure where we have the right people who are making decisions. We need the measures that we need in place to make sure that we know what we're doing and we gain the feedback so that we can correct it. And we need to understand how to put it on these streets so that this is sustainable. So we're Pueblo is right now is a business plan, creating structures to start creating the in the coming year. No, fine. So, big question is why do we do this? Why do any of us do what we're doing? What motivates us to take on the hard problems, to really, tackle the problems of kids or dads or amputations? I mean, what is it that motivates us? And we all have our reasons, and many of them are here in the room. But I think what
Tagal
is
maluto.
impressive
Gusto ko na
is
siyang
a couple
kainin.
things. One is that people do care. There are people like people in Pueblo, like people in this room, who are really trying to make a difference, and we can acknowledge that and capture and support it. I think the second thing is that we know this is doable. We have models of systems around the country and around the globe that do a better job for less money than we do. We know this is doable. We just need to figure out how to get ourselves there.
Actually, inintay ko na lang siyang lumapat.
Payback is really worth it. That if we're looking at again,
Tapos
what
ready to
Central
go na
Candidates
siya.
are saying in their debate, education
Grabe,
is
I
key to
can't
this country.
wait to
Where's
eat
the money
this.
gonna come from? Infrastructure needs to be built in this country. Where's the money gonna come from? Jobs need to be created in this country. If we don't tackle health
Tapos
costs,
syempre,
we're not gonna get that problem
hindi
solved.
mawawala
So for me, a big part of my
ang
motivation is doing
treat ni Hershey.
those are emotional.
Syempre, mawawala ba sa exam si Hershey? Lutuan ko sa Hershey ng chicken heart. Yan, kasi rich in vitamin B daw yan. It's really good for the dog's paw. Ay, paw. Fur.
This is what's really going to make a difference. And I really invite you to join us, to join together, and to really rethink how we do health and make a difference in this world. So thank you.
Yan, ayan. Tagal na maluto. Init na, okay.
Hello, I'm Charlie. This talk comes with a health warning. In fact, it comes with a global health warning. As it's very sad because the head of the World Health Organization, WHO, has declared another global health emergency of international concern, and that's to do with the deadly Ebola virus, this time in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, previously known as Zaire. This talk also comes with a health warning, because I'm going to take you to some dark places. I'm actually going to show you quite a distressing slide, but there's a reason it's there. But by the end of this talk, I hope to lead you out of the darkness into the light. And I hope to turn some of you into what I call gaslights. And that's a pun which I will explain in a few minutes. At this stage, in most presentations, speakers ask you to put away your phones. I'm going to ask you to keep your phones handy, and especially if you've got the light on your phone, to possibly turn that light on if by the end of my talk I've convinced you there's a reason that you should do so. This is a picture of my delightful daughter Amber. She's 4, and she's on her back scooter. And that man is going to feature quite a lot in this presentation. Now, when I was a year older than Amber, I was 5, I decided I wanted to be a doctor, to find a cure for cancer. I achieved one of the 2. You know which one. The cancer I now want to find a cure for is slow and ineffective response to global health emergencies. I think this is really important, because people in the poorest countries in the world suffer terribly when the response is late and ineffective. So my proposition is that we create a private alternative to the World Health Organization. Yeah, that's what I said. A private alternative to the World Health Organization. And I decided to call it GAS, which stands for Global Health Action Strategies and Solutions, hence the idea around gas lights. Now, to illustrate my talk, I've got two things in my doctor's bag which I'm going to use a little bit later. One of them is a balloon, and you're going to imagine that I'm going to give that balloon to my daughter. The other one is my Batman mask. Don't ask, but it's my Batman mask. Now, some of you will be wondering at this stage, why on earth is he wearing this particular t-shirt? Now, this t-shirt is actually a work of art. It's painted onto the t-shirt, and I've worn it especially for you. It has never been worn in public before. I bought it about 19 years ago at a charity auction, and I love Iggy Pop. He's one of the greatest rockers there is. Any of you who don't know his music, do engage with it. But one of his albums is called Lust for Life. And this image of this grinning guy is a picture on the front of that album, Lust for Life. And Lust for Life is the underlying theme of this talk today. I have a lust for life. Iggy Pop has a lust for life. I believe many of you in this room have a lust for life. And speaking of which, if any of you were unfortunate enough to go outside and be run over by a car in the Western world, what would happen if you were lying on the ground bleeding, if you were head injured, and for various reasons the emergency services had been outsourced or were ineffective and didn't arrive till 4 hours later? You'd be dead or permanently disabled. But the reason that doesn't happen is that in the Western world we understand the importance of, in medical terms, the golden hour. And in the golden hour we try to get to you, we try to make sure your head is stabilized so you don't get paralyzed. If you need fluids, intravenous fluids, we'll put those in you. We'll give you blood if necessary. If your heart stops, the paramedics will try to restart your heart. If you need to be on an intensive care unit, we'll do that as well. So whatever happens, someone will come to your rescue within the golden hour. Now I believe that global health emergencies also have the equivalent of a golden hour. But their golden hour is days or weeks, and it's the early days or weeks in which the most effective things could be done to reduce disability, save lives, and save economies. I'm going to show you now the 2014-2016 Ebola epidemic. On one side you have the new case per week, and below it you have the mark. In England we have don't make a molehill out of a mountain. Epidemic curves are either molehills or mountains. This became a mountain. I believe it could have been a molehill. When I say it became a mountain, 28,000 people died. Sorry, 28,000 people got infected, but 11,000 people or so died. Dozens of healthcare workers infected, hospitals shut down, and panic and mistrust in the eyes of the people in the streets. This is what Médecins Sans Frontières sees in countries that were ravaged by war. But in Sierra Leone, Liberia, and to a lesser extent in Guinea, it is Ebola that is generating immense public distress. As of today, more than 1,427 patients have succumbed to Ebola viral disease, and the cases established by Médecins Sans Frontières are overwhelmed. On the 8th of August, far too late, the World Health Organization declared the epidemic a public health emergency of international concern. However, it has been officially declared so in West Africa since March of 2014, and that report was by Thomas Neal, who is the President, and Bruno Jochen, who is the General Director of MSF at the time. 4 months late the response, and the consequence was this is a distressing time. This individual is dead from Ebola. This person on the other side is disrespected. His body is full of a deadly virus. But if you touch this and you get the virus in you, you will also die. Can you imagine the lack of quality that this represents? Also, it shows something that I believe that we can do. Because we don't sat there and say when this disaster happens, we sit on the sidelines. But the day we go to work, we pay our taxes to make that happen. Surely that those contributions need to be made. I believe we can make a contribution to the institution as well. This is terrible. Any point at which you can get infected. One of you in this room, or one of you in this room, could design a better quality.
Ito yung mga nakasilip sa butas tinatanggal ko.
Giving an eco-friendly 1.2 in many different sizes, made out of violet-killing material, and such material as this. One of you in this room, or one of you in this audience has the skills to test that. And this you in this audience has the ability to actually use it. If you were first in line, and you were most likely to be infected, and you were most likely to die, and you were not paid, you didn't have an insurance for your friends and family in case you had death or disability, would you stay and flee? I think most of you would flee, and it would be only time to got decisions to do so. But again, one of you in this room has the ability to create non-corruptible e-payments or mobile payments to help their workers, local household workers, in emergency situations. But again, no example, no example. We all know that when it starts to occur, the media is being moved into something else takes over. But one of you in this room or in this audience has the ability to catch the death carriers, the disability carriers, the economic carriers in the public mind, so that others are trained into action or create action. What we need to change is see the kinds of people, not all of them, where they work at, or know that before. The African Union, the Commonwealth, organisations like the Centre for Disease Control. So what I'm saying is that if you're not confident and if you care, you can do something about the situation. And I would like to say that this past, and you assume that others will do that caring that they don't do. But I need here to tell you that they don't always do what you think they should do. And also, we sit in the care of other people. So you don't have to help them. My proposition is, let's take the plan. And then I have to I want you to imagine that this room is a present to my uncle Amber. I'm going to burst a few balloons. I don't want you to be angry with me. I want you to engage me. I want you to join me. There's an author called G.K. Chesterton who said a quote something like this: fairy tales are important not because dragons exist. They're important because they show that dragons can be slain. One of the fairy tales we've all learned to believe is that the World Health Organization is a dragon slayer for global health emergency. It is not, and I'll tell you some of the reasons why. A military friend of mine who was heavily involved in Ebola in Sierra Leone, which is a country which is part of my territory, and global health emergencies are like that. We also make sure we have capacity and capability from the very beginning. We don't go to war without those two things. So we make sure we've got resources, we make sure we've got all the skills. On Egypt, no one's running around saying this is a deployable 10 or 7 tanks. Nobody's interviewed the skills. When I gave them scenarios being on the street, had to buy an ambulance, find the driver, and fund an And I believe that's among the many things that we need to do as we go WHO regional offices, the length of an open society approach and cultural impact of disease. WHO accepted responsibility. That would not happen in a world but in a similar way, the fight was on to free Smaller now. That does not immediately make me a sin. And advocate for it. To me, the UN and WHO is responsible. I want to experience this football club. We could not or need and then by his own team for not scoring goals. And his own team of the member states. There's a lot of history behind this, by the way. And it also has a serious impact because they give a mandate sometimes that mean that they can't even pass the ball or do the logical things that they should do. And the impact of this is ongoing death, ongoing disability, ongoing loss of livelihood. And we all, unfortunately, up to now, felt we had to sit on the sidelines. There are disasters that have happened where UN blue helmets are present with guns, but the mandate is that they can't interfere, so they stand there while people are dragged off to their death. I think you'll agree this is an unacceptable situation, which is within our power to change. Let me share with you some of my own experiences with global health when I was younger. This is me working for a British charity called Merlin in the country of Rwanda, a very small country. In Rwanda, unfortunately, in 1994, there was a mass killing of more than 800,000 people. Imagine if everyone in Heidelberg was killed, and then we repopulated Heidelberg, and everyone was killed. And then we repopulated Heidelberg, and everyone was killed. You still wouldn't have the number of people who were killed within that genocide. On top of that, 1 million people fled Rwanda, quite wisely, because they were worried about the and they fled to other countries, refugees. Now, unfortunately, some of those died as well, because in a refugee camp, creating hygiene and safe situations is very difficult. And there was an outbreak of another disease called cholera, and many of them died of cholera. Unfortunately, the Ebola virus is now here in that same area, an area of Ghana, in what used to be Zaire, but is now the Republic of the Congo. But some of my experiences in global health came from this period. We in the end were and I'm glad to say it's relatively successful, and I'm glad to say we saved quite a lot of lives. But along the way I learned to among those was clients of refugees who visited health centres. And the health centres couldn't speak Latin. They had Latin officials, but they couldn't speak the Latin. I saw situations where people like yourselves had donated a CT scanner to Rwanda, and they had forgotten that there was no viable electricity to make the CT scanner work. So that was at least $250,000 wasted. I worked with a Rwandan medical officer, and I said, what do you want to do about deadly malaria? And he said, well, nothing. And I said, why nothing? He said, I've been told it's not a priority, and children were dying of malaria. I visited a health centre, or a series of health centres, that, believe me, the kids were skinny and scrawny, The mothers were skinny and scrawny. There was no food because they relied on pre-UN supplies, which unfortunately had dried up, partly because of war. The utensils were dirty. It was happening. At the end of a very, very dispiriting day, we went to a final health centre. And I'm really pleased to tell you, it was paradise. The kids were chubby cheeked kids. The mothers looked well and happy and were well dressed. And there was food. And it worked. And I called the medical officer aside and I said, how the hell did you achieve this? And he said, I never relied on free UN food because I thought it was unsustainable. I said to every mother, can you give me a few pennies a week and we will grow food? And they did that. And they survived throughout the centre had thrived. So that's one of the reasons, not many, that I don't actually want to create a charity. Let me try and tell you a final story involving food. So when we were waiting for the refugee crisis, we were making plans. And included in those plans, obviously, was food. We were going to need food if suddenly 12,000 or 1 million people turned up. And the UN had told us not to worry about food because food was sorted. They had bought tons and sacks of food, and it was stored in Kenya, not far away. So food was something we didn't need to worry about. The refugees started arriving, and we got called to a meeting with the UN, all of the non-governmental organisations. And the guy from the UN said, I've got to make an apology. We've got tons of food in Kenya. We've literally bought sacks of tons of food. And only now have we found it is not food. We've been ripped off. We've been conned. Now, you don't normally hear those stories. But any one of you in this room, or some of you in this room, or some of you in the audience, have the skills of product procurement and quality control and maintenance. But again, you haven't been asked to play in this very important equation that affects people's lives and people's livelihoods. I want you now all to use your imaginations. So what I want you to do is look up wherever you are to the sky or the ceiling and imagine that there's a signal, something in the sky, more attractive than Dorothy's rainbow. And the thing that you see in the sky is actually an oval yellow symbol, and inside is a bat. The Batman has been called. And from previous experience, you all sigh with relief, because the Batman normally arrives on time, he normally sorts out the crime, and everything's done. But unfortunately on this occasion, the Batman arrives days or weeks late. Now you'd all be singularly unimpressed if when the Batman arrived, he also said, I have to make an apology because I forgot my bat belt, and I have to swing back across Gotham to get it. You'd also be very disappointed if the Batman said to you, you know what, I've been doing this laugh since World War II, and my knees aren't quite the same. My organs aren't quite the same. And, you know, I don't think I can do this crime fighting as well as I used to. And finally, you'd be really, really pissed off if the Batman said, well, there are some essential tools for my job. There's the Bat car, the Bat helicopter, and the Bat boat. But unfortunately, they're all in storage. And I have to be very honest with you, I haven't been able to keep up the payments. And I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind just doing a quick whip round and trying to raise the money so that we can solve the issue. This is all wrong. The capacity and the capability need to be there. Let me just go back to the Ebola epidemic curve. A mountain that could have been a molehill, with thousands of people dead. If you think that a global health system is the time, I would ask you to get up this time. I would ask you to follow the light, and I would ask you to serve as a business citizen of the global force that you are committed to doing something to change the world. We're going to keep an eye. Thank you. Thank you. My And I hope that in the future, we see T-shirts with these T-shirts, with these armbands, helping the global poor. In Ebola in Sierra Leone in 2014-16, the cost to the 3 countries involved, including Nigeria and Guinea, are estimated at $4.3 billion. These are already poor countries. Let me tell you another thing that happens with the UN funding. America is frankly contemptuous. At times it has withheld $1.3 billion of UN funding. And at 1 year at least, individual Americans spent more on flowers than America contributed to the UN. We have a problem, but we can solve that problem because we, all of you in this audience, have a real love for life. I could have ended with quotes from Gandhi or